Hi, Emma. It's great to see you again. I'm glad you were able to make it in this week. I know scheduling can be hard when you have a lot going on. Was traffic and weather and everything fine?
Oh yeah, traffic was fine.
Okay.
Got here easily.
Good. I'm glad. So today we're going to jump right into the mood check, which we did last week. It was where we discussed anxiety being the most pressing problem you want to talk about and really wanting to dig in on that. And 10 would be the most anxious you've ever been, and 0 would be no anxiety at all, feeling great. So this week, where would you say you've been on that scale?
I think I've been consistently about a 7.
Okay.
This whole week.
So still pretty high.
Yeah.
I think last week you said it was 8, so you're still kind of in that upper range. Tell me a little bit more about that, about the 7 and what that looks like for you.
It's sort of just always there, sort of I can function and go about my day, but it's just sort of, it never really goes away. It's just always in the back of my mind.
Yeah, that makes sense. Just kind of that pressing, like constant burden, just always there. Okay. So today I want to get more of an update on your week, especially just kind of your thoughts and emotions and what was going on. And then we're going to really kind of, together, we'll talk about what you want to do today, what you want to focus on, and we'll pick something to kind of dig into more, which we didn't do last week. So this week it might be a little overwhelming, digging into the emotions, digging into the thoughts, and more of the cognitive behavioral techniques that we talked about last week, about how automatic thoughts lead to emotions, leads to behaviors, and connecting all of that. We'll also review the little homework assignment I gave you last week, which went over those cognitive behavioral skills. And at the end of the session, we'll discuss what you think would be helpful for you moving forward to practice this next week.
Okay.
And we'll kind of just review, and I'll get some feedback on how you feel like all of this is going.
Okay.
Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, great. So give me an update on this week. You said we talked about just feeling like constant 7, feeling like it's always there right under the surface. Tell me a little bit, some more specific scenarios of how that's affected you.
Well, I've been anticipating an upcoming job interview here in the next few days. Trying to prepare for kind of what questions they might ask me, kind of why I want the job, if I'm fit for the job, and there's been a lot of anxiety about not feeling adequate or qualified for this job. And then there's also kind of just the pervasive, always there anxiety about studying for the GRE, which is in a couple of months.
That's right.
And just not always understanding the material and just really studying, and it's just a lot, and it's exhausting to always be studying, and to feel like it might be for nothing if I don't do well on it. So
yeah, it's a lot to manage. It sounds like I didn't know you had a job interview coming up.
Yes.
We talked last week about applying for new positions and all of that, which was also stressful. But it sounds like the two main things you're kind of weighing are the GRE and this upcoming interview. That's a lot of pressure. Both of those things bring a lot of pressure, bring a lot of anxiety if you're not already struggling with anxiety. So it sounds like that would be pretty frustrating. Last week with the homework that we did, it was that thought record of anytime you felt anxious, you would write down that you were feeling anxious, what you were feeling emotion-wise, and in your body what you were feeling. And you would also write the thought that you were having related to that anxious feeling, and then what the resulting behavior was. Can you give me, I don't know if you brought it with you, but can you give me some examples of what that looked like this week?
I left it in the car, sorry, so I'll try to remember it the best I can. But there were a few times where I would start to get anxious about thinking about the job, and and just not be able to kind of focus on anything else. And so it sort of like distracted me from other things I needed to be doing, and just not being able to kind of focus on anything else prevented me from getting other things done. And it was sort of all the time, so.
Yeah. So that was pretty on your mind a lot this week.
Yes.
I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, you did a great job of explaining thought, emotion, behavior.
Mm-hmm.
What was your thought?
The thought was that, like, the interview was going to go badly.
And then anxiety was the resulting emotion and feeling.
Yeah.
And then behavior was?
The behavior was just not being able to do anything else, and sort of only being capable of, like, sitting and worrying about the interview.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which that makes sense. Like, does it kind of, do you feel like working on that assignment was helpful for you?
Sort of not. I mean, it was so, it's so always there that I felt like I never had a break from the assignment.
Yeah.
So it was just, I don't know, I was always thinking about it. So it wasn't necessarily helpful in getting the anxiety to go away at all.
Right.
But, I mean, it was fine.
Yeah.
I tried to do it.
It's not helpful, and it's more of a tool to recognize the anxiety and what's causing it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that doesn't help it go away, which is
Mm-hmm.
hopefully what we'll dig into a little bit more today.
Okay.
I'm not saying that this session will completely solve your anxiety. That's not how therapy works.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work on your own, a lot of working on the assignments and coming in once a week or regularly. So, but I'm really thankful that you're honest with me about that. A lot of people will come in and they'll be like, oh, that session, like, that was a great assignment, I love it, it connected all the dots. But it doesn't necessarily, and that's important to recognize that understanding it doesn't mean it's gone.
Right.
That's just a small step.
Right.
So I'm very impressed that you were able to recognize all those things. That's awesome. So let's kind of talk a little bit more about, I heard you talking about the main problems you were interested in kind of this week that were kind of on your mind were the GRE, which is coming up in a few months, and this upcoming job interview. Which would you say is kind of most important for you today?
The job interview, for
Job
sure.
interview.
It's
Okay.
coming up sooner than the GRE, and I think it has more lasting reverberations in my life
Yeah.
than the GRE.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's gotta secure a job. There's a lot that goes along with that. It's not just the interview. It makes sense. So would you say that that's what you wanna focus on?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, great. You're gonna absolutely do that. So we'll prioritize that today. That doesn't mean we're gonna ignore the GRE anxiety. I want to get to that, and I do think that is important. And you've mentioned it a few times today, which kind of indicates that it is important. But I want to work on what you want to work on and what's most pressing for you. So for you to be able to identify that as an issue and come in and talk about that today that's great. So tell me about this interview. What are your thoughts approaching the interview?
Well, the job is for a position in sales and in marketing, and so I just really want to try to study up on like what I think they're gonna ask me, and really try to present myself as someone who is capable of selling things and marketing things. So yeah,
It's great. That's great. So what are your concerns, I guess? If that's bringing anxiety.
Right.
What are the anxious thoughts and emotions?
I've been very anxious specifically that the interview is not going to go well, that I'm going to say something wrong, or I'm going to mess it up, or I'm not going to know the answer to a question, and that I'm just going to make a fool of myself.
Okay. So there's the concern of making yourself look bad in some way, which which is, I mean, a lot of people have that concern going into any interview or any social situation. What else? What are some other concerns that you have regarding that? If you have more.
Yeah, I think that's the main concern. Just really worried that the hiring manager is gonna view me as an idiot or a fool, and that I won't get the job and my life will spiral downward from there.
Right. So that's your concern. That's
Yeah.
a good concern to start with.
Yeah.
So I am going to point out a few little things.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked a little bit last week about cognitive distortions and dysfunctional thoughts, which doesn't mean your brain is not working or you're a dysfunctional person. That's not what that means at all. It means that your thoughts tend to work in a certain pattern. And some people have certain thoughts that go the same way multiple times. And that can be something like assuming the worst or believing that everything is your fault or something like that. So this concern that the hiring manager will think you're an idiot, think you're a fool, that would be kind of considered mind reading. Not that you're reading the mind, but just this assumption that you understand what he thinks, maybe, or that this assumption that someone will perceive you in a certain way. When in reality you haven't had that interaction yet, so it hasn't quite happened. I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm just trying to explain a little bit more about that. There's also the idea of like fortune telling, which is predicting an outcome, and it's usually based on what you believe is already going to happen. So do you feel like those are accurate in describing that thought of I might make a fool of myself and then I won't get the job?
Yeah, I think those are accurate descriptions of those thoughts.
It doesn't mean, I'm not saying it's not a legitimate thought. I mean, lots of people have that concern. But it may not, we don't know that result yet, I guess, if that makes sense.
That's true.
So I heard you say an if-then statement, which we talked about a tiny bit last week, of if this happens, then this will happen. And the concern was if I'm seen as a fool, if I'm seen as an idiot, then I won't get the job. Tell me a little bit more about how much that affects you, how much you believe that.
It affects me pretty deeply. I think there's been at least once a day for the last maybe week that thought has hit me and sort of just stopped me in my tracks, that like if I don't answer the question right, or if they think that I'm stupid or not able to do the job, that I won't get the job, and then if I don't get the job, then I won't be able to pay my bills, and if I can't pay my bills, then I get kicked out of my head. If I don't, and it starts to spiral on and on and on.
That's really overwhelming.
Yeah, it is.
I understand. I understand why that would be stressful. That makes sense. You know how your brain works, and you're able to track that train of thought, which is a good way to start. But like we said, like understanding it doesn't
make it go away.
It doesn't make it go away. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most, how much would you say you believe that if you're seen as a fool, you won't get the job?
Probably about a 6 or a 7.
Okay, so still like pretty high. That's a pretty high likelihood of feeling that. Feeling it more likely to be true than not.
Right.
Yeah. So when you're thinking about that, and when that came to you a lot this week, what emotion came with that?
Fear and dread, I think, would be the two that were the most prevalent.
Yeah, fear and dread. That sounds good. Sounds good. Sounds reasonable. And tell me about the strength of that emotion on a scale of 1 to 10. How much fear or dread? Let's pick one. So, which do you feel like you felt more?
I think dread.
Dread.
Yeah.
Okay. Just about the interview itself.
About the interview. Yeah.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, whenever you thought about this upcoming interview this week, what level of dread were you at? 10 being the highest.
Probably like a 7 or an 8.
Okay. So also pretty high.
Yeah.
Yeah. So believing it pretty strongly comes with feeling it really strongly.
Yeah.
So what times would you say, like when do you feel like this thought hits you most during the week? I know you said it was a pretty constant concern. Would you say that there's times that you feel it more than others?
I think so. I think times when I have a minute to, like, if I'm not doing anything else, so if I'm not actively, like, doing something for someone else or running an errand or making dinner, like if I'm just like sitting and trying to relax or like be quiet, that's when it kind of hits me the most, because that's when my brain has the most time to, it's not distracted by other things, it has the most time to like think about it.
Yeah, so in that downtime, maybe when you're not working on things, not studying, not occupied.
Right.
So something we talk about sometimes with emotions, and we talked about it a little bit with anxiety, but let's talk a little bit more about with dread for this specific job interview. Where would you say you feel that in your body? Like, with anxiety you can feel tense. I saw you kind of use the emotion of feeling anxiety here, maybe like in your shoulders or on your back, or how would you say that dread kind of presents itself?
I feel dread in the pit of my stomach. It just sort of feels heavy. And it just won't go away.
Okay. So maybe like, I've heard people talk about like a rock kind of feeling.
Yeah.
Does that resonate? Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds really, that's frustrating.
It is. Yeah.
To feel that so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you do next when you feel that dread? What is your solution? What do you decide to do?
I usually try to reason with myself and say, like, this is just anxiety. It's not necessarily real, or it's not exactly what what's going to happen. And then if that doesn't work, I just try to distract myself with other things so I don't have to think about it.
Yeah. So self-talk and distractions are occupying your mind. Those are pretty good coping mechanisms for when you're feeling dread or feeling whatever you're feeling in your body, even if you can't name it. So I feel like I've gotten an understanding of where this thought is coming from. Those questions were helping me understand the context of this feeling, where it's coming, how it presents itself. How would you say, what would you say is, like, is there any evidence that supports that thought, that if you're a fool or if you look like an idiot, you won't get the job?
I mean, like, no, not like hard evidence in this specific situation. But I mean, if I don't do well in the interview, then I'm not going to get the job. So
yeah, there is the logical, like, if then, like, one thing will lead to another, like, just that evidence in and of itself. What evidence would you say there is against that being true?
Well, I mean, I've done job interviews well in the past, and I've gotten other jobs, and I got into school, I got other things done, and those had interviews, and I got through those interviews just fine. So logically, I'll probably get through this interview fine too.
That's actually one of my questions, is what's the most realistic outcome?
Yeah.
But again, I'm not saying that doesn't change the feeling of anxiety and of all that. But it does, like, we talked about how understanding it doesn't necessarily change it, how you feel. Or it doesn't change the anxiety, it doesn't make it float away or get rid of it. But challenging those thoughts is a good way to start kind of retraining our mind to have different patterns, to have our mind go this way instead of, and then the spiral that you talked about. So that's a great point. You did it yourself. You got there yourself. Realizing like, yes, there's maybe some evidence, like if X happens, then there can be X, Y, Z. But yeah, those were great points of you've done interviews in the past, you've been employed in the past, you've done school, you're studying for the GRE. That shows that you have made major successes in your life, which involve the same kind of assessments as an interview. So that was great for you to be able to track those yourself. I would encourage you to remember those as you get anxious about these things. And that's a great way to kind of think that through. Another way to challenge yourself with this is think if your best friend or a family member was going through a similar situation and felt what you felt, they felt the dread in their stomach, the anxiety on their shoulders, what would you say to them?
Probably tell them that everything was going to be fine and they were going to get through the interview just fine.
So it's a little easier, like it's easier to kind of
to tell someone else that,
yeah. So that is sometimes helpful for people to kind of think about that. And then others, it's easier to kind of think like, I have done this, I have done this, I have done that. And you literally just did, listing out times where you've coped with it well, whether it was self-talk, kind of rationalizing like I just saw you do, or keeping yourself distracted. I think that's a great way to kind of move forward with this. I think, do you feel like that would be something that's helpful for you to maybe practice this week, is challenging those automatic thoughts? You did the list of automatic thoughts last week, which you said was helpful in recognizing that they're there, but not in changing them or getting rid of them.
Right.
So sometimes I'm gonna propose a homework assignment, but if you feel like it's not gonna be helpful, I want to know that on the front end, and I feel like you would tell me.
I'll tell you. Yeah.
Do you feel like it would be helpful to do a similar assignment to last week, but with those automatic thoughts, have those challenge questions of what evidence is there that supports this, and what evidence is there that doesn't support this, and kind of thinking through those. And I have a list and a paper that I can give you that kind of goes through some things that will help you maybe retrain that thought pattern.
I think that would be helpful. I think the challenging those automatic thoughts has been helpful in the past. It's just a matter of remembering to do it.
Yeah, which is like the practice portion.
Right.
We want to, hopefully in therapy, like 1 hour therapy session once a week can be helpful in relieving temporary anxiety, or it can be a temporary solution, but it also is, therapy is a partnership. It's training and it's teaching. And my goal is to help you be able to help remember those things, help them be so ingrained that your automatic response isn't, I might be a fool and not get the job. It's, I've done this before, I think I can do it again. So does that sound like a good homework assignment to you? That would be helpful.
It does, yeah. I think that sounds helpful.
And if not, you can always say, like, this isn't helpful, and we can figure out more things. And we'll review that more next week, too. Okay. I would love to talk about that more if you're able to come in next week.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think that would be a good assignment for this week.
Okay. Is
kind of challenging those automatic thoughts, which is hard when you're used to thinking a certain way.
Yep.
But I think that'll really help retrain those patterns. So today was a little more of a hefty session than last week, which we talked about them getting a little more in depth. We talked about automatic thoughts and challenging automatic thoughts, cognitive distortions, and how those contribute to dysfunctional thinking. How do you feel about today's session?
I feel good. I think it has given me some tools to kind of challenge these anxious thoughts and these things that I feel throughout the week. So I think it's been good.
Do you feel like you'll be able to utilize these throughout the week?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. I do want to reinforce, like with the homework, you discussed that thinking about it constantly was overwhelming. So what do you feel like is a reasonable amount of times to do that this week?
Maybe about like once a day.
Once a day? Okay, great. So 7 times.
Yeah.
Again, we'll talk about it. Great. Yeah, I would not want you to have to obsess about this. I don't want the homework to control your life.
Right.
I know that there's a lot going on already, so I don't want to pile on to that. And if you feel like once a day is too much and you want to go to 3 times a week, then it's really just doing what you can where it challenges you, but it's effective and not overwhelming. So, yeah, do you feel good about this moving forward?
I do, yeah.
Okay, great. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about while you're here today?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay.
I think that does, and we'll check back in next week.
Great.
And see if anything else has popped up.
Makes sense. What day is the interview?
What's today? So Friday, then the interview is on Wednesday.
Okay. So it'll be probably before I see you again.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Best of luck with that.
Thank you.
I would encourage you to kind of think through that assignment and practice some of those. If you're doing once a day, that would give you a good bit of practice before that comes. That would help. Yeah, and I think I'm very impressed with how you're doing. I think you're really good at you're very logical. We've talked about that last week. You like to have a train of thoughts and how things work. And then, yeah, we'll work on retraining that spiral, retraining that pattern. But I'm really glad you were able to come in today.
Yeah, me too.
I feel like the session went really well. And I hope you do too.
I do, yeah, I do. I think it's always helpful.
Good. I'm glad. So I will see you next Friday.
Okay.
Post-interview.
All right, thank you.
It was great to see you, Emma.
Good to see you too.